Hi guys, it's Deja. I'm in Jill Collins' communications class, and today I'm going to talk to you about the U.S. foster care system, some of the pros and the cons, and I'm going to focus it more directly on Idaho versus the whole country. So, first and foremost, foster care was actually started back in the biblical era, but we can most recently trace the actual beginning of foster care to 1636 when the colonizers opened Jamestown and the first foster care child was placed in a home. After we placed the first foster care child, we started to have an issue throughout the United States where people would take in foster kids but use them as indentured servants more than anything else. And so we had that issue, and we seem to have got that under control with the abolishment of slavery. And then we started to have another issue we're going to fast forward to the last 5 to 8 years and talk about the issues we're having today. Direct statistics from Youth Today say a study of foster care in Oregon and Washington states found out that nearly 1/3 of the reported abusings of a in foster homes came from a parent or another adult in the foster home. And that study didn't even include the cases of foster care children abusing each other. In another study from Youth Today, the same place that is an affiliate of the U.S. foster care website, a study in the metropolitan Atlanta found out that among children whose goal was to be adopted, 34% had experienced an abuse, neglect, or another harmful behavior. For those children who had recently entered the system, 15% of them had suffered abuse from another child while there as well. From the results of my questionnaire, it told me that a lot of the kids in my group said the only reason they would foster is if it was someone they knew or there was an extenuating circumstance. And I believe that there are plenty of extenuating circumstances right now without them having to be blood. Everyone wants to help kids and everyone says they care about kids, but at the end of the day, we have a big issue that no one is fostering. We don't have enough homes for these kids, so we throw kids in group homes or homes that have way too many kids in them as well. And then parents will lash out because their kids aren't being taken care of, but the foster parent will say they are because they receive financial compensation for the more children they have in their home. They receive a check for X amount of dollars every week. So you do have people that unfortunately don't have the best intentions at heart and will take on more children than they can handle. I feel that I have not the most, but I have a great knowledge about this. One, I am adopted, and two, the foster care system is something I'm passionate about. As I talked about in my introduction speech, I would love to do NPO work for the rest of my life, and one of my main goals would be to work on straightening out some of the issues that are in the foster care system because it's going to be a long road. It's going to be a long process. I can also speak about this extensively because my mom has adopted not one but 3 kids, 2 of us from the foster care system, and then me who was from a private adoption. My brother, who is the same age as me, but we are not twins, was adopted from Texas out of a foster home. The foster home had him for 6 weeks, and they didn't want to take care of him anymore because he was getting to the point where he needed more attention because he was sick. And so they decided to either give him back in an orphanage or put him up for adoption. So the state had 14 days to find a place to take him, so my mom took him in. And this is just one example of what happens to kids in foster care. They get taken in, and then they get rejected out of the system as fast as they were put in it, without the time to find proper homes or proper places for these children. Sometimes, because social workers are overworked, they will neglect to deeply dive into the people that are trying to adopt these children, and they'll just give them to the first person that's available. Fast approaching is National Adoption Month, so I encourage anyone to take the time to talk to somebody that you know is adopted or has an association with an adoptee or is a birth mom, to sit down and really have a talk with them and see what's going on in their head. One case I'd like to focus on is in Florida. In the year 2015 alone, Florida had 4,000 children slip through the cracks in the foster care. When I say slip through the cracks, I mean either they were killed, were malnourished, their records were lost, or something happened to them and no one had any account to prove like what was going on. These kids were just unaccounted for, and that was 4,000 children in a year just in Florida. So imagine if that was just even in 10 states, that's way too many kids that are going unaccounted for. I was adopted And as being adopted, I realized I could have easily been on one of those numbers. Again, referring back to my questionnaire, I had a lot of people tell me that they would only do it if it was like a severe need, but it is a severe need. There is a need for us to do these things and take care of these kids. If you foster, you don't have to be a perfect parent to be a foster parent. You don't have to have the nicest car or the nicest house or the nicest things, but these kids need love and they need nourishment, spiritual as well as physical. It's hard being a kid as it is, so we need to have a place where these kids can come home and feel safe every night. As kids get older, it's harder and harder to find places to foster. Everyone will throw out the word adoption, but no one wants to adopt a child with issues. Most of the kids in foster care have come from less than ideal situations, whether it be drug-related, abuse, or they've simply been abandoned in the worst case, which is so terrible to think about that these kids have been abandoned. One thing that can help with foster care is implementing after-school programs throughout the community, churches, and your own personal things. If you can get more than just you and involved, you can make sure these kids have a safe outlet to talk about their anger, whether it's just sitting down and being there for them or actually organizing groups where they can talk about the issues that are facing. Lots of kids get separated from their siblings, so they have lots of anger and resentment, and they need a safe place to talk about these issues. Many famous rappers have even attributed their success in life to people they've met in the YMCA. We have a great place here in town called the Levitt Center. It's just down the road from the police station, and it's an after-school program that offers cooking classes, music, acting, and theater. And as we all know, the arts are a great way for kids to get through their issues in a safe and controlled environment. The best way to help kids is to make them feel safe wherever, whatever they're doing. So I said already that I was adopted. So this is my family. As you can see, my family is a little bit different. This is my oldest sister. That's my brother. And then this is my mom and my grandma and my aunt. So obviously my family and I don't look anything alike, but I can personally attest to the blessings of being adopted and the many benefits that it has. I'm sure that right now you're thinking, I don't have the time, I don't have the money, but I'm asking you to do something as simple as maybe take into the consideration of fostering, even if it's not something you can do right now as a college student, but something you could do with a spouse and as an adult later on in life. I think, seriously, if you have as much as a spare room or an extra 15 hours a week, that's something you could give back to the community. I know that everyone's life in is busy, but these kids are scared. They've usually been ripped out of homes. They've come from really terrible situations. And people say that the foster care system is a safe place, and it can be safe, but it can also be full of evils from people that I've already touched base on that are only in it for the financial gain and benefit, which hurts my heart to think about. But the foster care system is a great way for people who can't have kids to have the opportunity to have children. In vitro fertilization is expensive, and there are more than enough willing kids that would love to be adopted. So to conclude today, I would simply like to ask you that as National Adoption Month is fast approaching in November, ISU has lots of great panels you can attend. I was on a panel last spring that talked about adoption, and it came from adoptees, adopters, and birth moms, and I learned stuff that I didn't know even during that panel. I think today we dived a little bit deeper into the main issue, which is financial compensation for people who are taking in more than one foster care child, and the fact that our social workers are burning out at an exceptional rate. I think there are so many positives to the foster care system, but I also realize there are so many negatives. We can't change things immediately, but if more people are willing to foster, we can take the steps time and time again to make sure we are taking care of our youth who will later become our leaders. Since I'm a product of adoption, I do feel like I have a right to talk about this because it is something I'm passionate about. It is something that is close to my heart, and it is something that I have seen change lives. And I think you can change a life too. It's once been said that there is no such thing as an unwanted child, only an unfound family. And I encourage you as November comes up to think about adopting.